obviously I'll go over a couple more maybe guys outside looking in, but yeah, there's John's top 5. All right, let me dive into mine. So for 2023, starting off at number 5, I also went with Josh Jacobs along with you there. I mean, just couldn't deny the season he had. For one, was finally, I feel he's dealing with a lot of injuries. It felt like the first couple of years he played through them, but you never. Once again, if he's playing through them, he may not have been 100%. And then you did rightfully cite the efficiency wasn't really there for Josh Jacobs the first couple of years, and obviously we saw it this year. Probably helped that the Josh McDaniels offense opened things up more in the pass game, and you could say too because Derek Carr is out. They had that whole situation, and new regime, but. Yeah, Josh showed his power. He showed he has got good speed. Obviously, broke a couple big ones, notably the one against Seattle. So it was good to see him play to the potential that many of us felt that he had after his rookie season. And it kind of worked out because, as we mentioned last offseason, seemed like Raiders weren't really too hot on him. I mean, they even denied his 5th-year option, which is kind of the reason why they're in this situation right now. So. Like you said, it'll be interesting to see how that situation plays out, but definitely a top 5 back for me at this current point. Can't deny his power, and good to see him get more involved in the receiving game too, like you mentioned, because I think that was a huge knock too, was he's not a 3-down back, but last year showed that he was, because there was talk before, like Gruden would mention, like, oh yeah, we're going to play him in the Camaro role, but he didn't obviously do that when Gruden was head coach, but we saw a little bit more of it last year. And obviously we'll see if they build off that or he goes elsewhere. We'll see how the Raiders, if they want to open up their checkbooks for him. But he is at my number 5. At number 4, this is where it got kind of tough. But I went with CMC at number 4. Obviously, great to finally see him in a system that, I mean, not that Carolina hadn't worked for the past few years, though. Obviously, Carolina, not very good offensive line, and they've had a carousel of quarterbacks. So we never really got to see him be fully in a fully great situation. Now we do. We all know the Kyle Shanahan running scheme, and on top of all the other things that we saw McCaffrey do in the passing game, he could easily be higher on this list. My only concern would be just durability, and he has had a lot of touches throughout the first few years, dealt a lot of abuse, and once again, that was kind of an issue going into last season was can he stay healthy? And not to put it on a team, but as we know, the 49ers have not had the greatest luck in terms of health, and I'm knocking on wood right now, don't worry. Hopefully that changes for CMC because, I mean, we even saw him throw out there throwing touchdown passes. We all know he's electric in the open field, and it's just like you said, you had him at 1. I completely understand that. Extremely versatile. And unfortunately, though, he only gets 4 just because I personally do like a running back to be able to have the sledgehammer ability. And that's only the real knock is like inside the tackles. I would be a little bit more concerned with McCaffrey, but obviously he can get the job done since he's in this top echelon. And hopefully he can stay healthy and just keep wreaking havoc with Kyle Shanahan. So he is at number 4 for me. Number 3 is where I went with Derrick Henry. And I just cited the sledgehammer ability. Obviously, Derrick Henry is kind of the poster boy for that. All the dirty in between tackle work. But then, as we all know, the dude can just give him a seam and he will break it wide open. And we've all seen the stiff arms. Like we know that while he may not be the shiftiest back, he is still so much shifty. Like once he gets going, he's a tough guy to take down. I mean, that's literally all like the game plans are. It's like, hey, don't let Derrick get a full head of steam. Make sure we stop him in the backfield before he starts going. So make him move a little more laterally. Don't let him get that straight line speed. So he's at number 3. Like you mentioned, he still had a really good year last year, despite issues on the offensive line, issues at quarterback. Because remember, Tannehill, I forget, he got injured, right? And then they threw him Malik Willis, and then it got so bad that they had Josh Dobbs out there for a game that decided if they were going to be in the playoffs potentially. So I'm assuming the Titans will get that fixed around, but age is also a concern for Henry because he's starting to get to that scary age where all the hits, all the abuse you've taken comes back to get you. We saw it with Zeke recently, and I'm pretty sure Henry's older than Zeke. So, and especially with any back really, but the power backs and Henry, most of the time defenders are going for the legs. So, yeah, and he's already dealt with foot issues. Just a few red flags that concern me for Derrick Henry going forward, and his longevity. But I'm rooting for him, obviously. I know Titan fans are, but yeah, he's number 3. Obviously, a little meat on the bone in terms of receiving ability I would like to see. But I mean, once again, when you're getting up here, you can't have it all. So, but he checks off a lot of the other boxes very well. So he's at number 3. Once again, McCaffrey could easily be like 1 through 4 is like pretty interchangeable in my opinion for me. Let me get to 2 though. And number 2 is Jonathan Taylor. I forget where I had him. I'll check my rankings later. But obviously you mentioned he's also dealt with some issues. We know the Colts also, once again, offensive line underperformed, dealt with very poor quarterback play, to say the least. We saw the kind of train wreck the season was with, and no offense to him, but Matt Ryan, it just didn't work out there. And then they had Sam Ellinger out there as well. I forget if they had anyone else at some point, but obviously got pretty bad there. And I think if I remember correctly, because I had him in the league, I think he was dealing with some ankle issues too once, mid to late way through the year. So, and obviously they weren't in playoff contention. So why push yourself? And we'll see what happens with him and Jim Irsay and the Colts going forward. I don't think we'll do a video just because I don't know, he could go anywhere. And because of how, like we mentioned, how kind of devalued the running back position is. It seems like a lot of teams are so good there, but nonetheless, I have him at 2. We all know he's an explosive playmaker. I think he can do more in the pass game. It's just, last year I was hoping to see more of that. Obviously we didn't get to because of the whole fiasco. I think he can kind of do some of the CMC things, at least running wise. Hands wise, CMC's the best in terms of, I think, receiving backs of this group. But Taylor not far behind and can still take abuse inside the tackles, be kind of not really a power run, but run with power, run with purpose. And we all know we can break one. So hopefully he can stay healthy too, because once again, health's been a little bit of an issue, and we'll see what happens to this contract situation. But he's at number 2 for me. And number 1 is where I went with Nick Chubb. You mentioned the consistency. He's just always been consistent, stayed relatively healthy, can run between the tackles. We know we can break open, can beat people in just a straight foot race, down the sideline if he has to. And kind of like with Jonathan Taylor, would like to see a little bit more in the receiving game, but I think he can do that, and he does do just enough. And we'll see if the Browns give him more of that responsibility, or if they do what they've been doing, which is use running back. I don't know who would fill him, but I'm just saying running back X, for example, to be their more passing down back. But I think he can handle that if in crunch situations if they really wanted to. But I think from my perspective, it just seems like the Browns have been trying to preserve his career, which rightly so. We've seen running backs that can be burnt out very quickly. That's what I was worried about with Josh Jacobs. With Nick Chubb, been preserved pretty well. Hasn't had many scary injuries, because remember, he came into the league coming off an ACL tear. He's looking pretty good since. Does help, good offensive line and stuff. And he finally has a quarterback. So I mean, the sky's the limit for him as well. But it was really tough to rank out these guys, but he was the more consistent one, in my opinion, out of the group. So that's why I went with Chubb at 1. But like I said, 1 through 4 for me is pretty interchangeable. If just like we always say, it's just what style do you like? What flavor do you like? And I want a little more consistency at running back. So, like you mentioned, though, Henry could very easily fall. McCaffrey, another good year with the 49ers, an off season with the 49ers. He could easily catapult for me to be unanimous 1. And then, just who I left off the list too, that you didn't mention, Austin Eckler, really good, but not as efficient. I know he had some people are going to, because I know we're going to get the Austin Eckler people coming oh, he had 13 touchdowns. He punched it in. That's great, but he wasn't really efficient, and this wasn't really his fault, but the Chargers weren't really the greatest running attack either. They had very poor schemes, and they also had injuries as well, and they didn't really even try to run the ball much. So or like what I mean, like is more a lot of single back, just creative run schemes as opposed to, okay, shotgun, we're just going to give you, inside, outside zone. That the run game is kind of bland in my opinion. And then I'm just looking at the yards leaders. Obviously ETN, he's knocking on the door, not there yet. Najee Harris falls under the not efficient for me. Now, granted, I know his line isn't great either, but I know you were too. We were never really that huge on Najee coming out. And then obviously I think Dameon Pierce, maybe with the actual quarterback and better passing attack year 2 as well, he could probably be knocking on this door come next year, very possibly. But any contingencies or feedback that you'd like to share, John?
No, I mean, we had the same top 5. It was just different order. So, can't really complain. The running back position is also just one of those that I don't feel like it kind of comes down to preference, honestly. There's been some years that it's like, all right, Derrick Henry got 2,000. Like, come on, you got to put him number 1. But other than that, I don't know. I feel like it largely is like there's a group. And as long as you got the group, then you're good.
Yeah, so like I said, the same 5 just shuffled for our running backs.